Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to Great Shot Kid, the Nerd Party's podcast that examines the work of Star Wars creators both inside and outside the Star Wars galaxy. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
And this week, we're not going to do a single controversial thing because we are coming right out of Mike's experiences with Star Wars Celebration Orlando, the big Star Wars celebration event that has traditionally been thrown. I mean, they originated with the prequels as a way to drum up support for the prequels, and they've kept going.
Yeah.
And now they are ways for Disney to drum up support for their new films. Now, this is the third celebration since Disney took over, correct?
I believe so, yeah, in America, yeah, right.
So this is Orlando, and so we're at one of the Disney capitals of the world, and I was unable to go, but Mike, you were able to go. So I want to set the stage here first before we get into the questions about what your excitement level was, and how you were going into this, what you were expecting in terms of experience, and then we'll get into the questions about what was met and stuff like that. So day one, going into it, your plane's about to come down. What's going through your mind?
Well, yeah, my excitement level was pretty high, not so much because of like what I was expecting to see or whatever, or what big announcements there were, but more because, I had been to Celebration 3 and Celebration 4, and, Celebration 3 in particular was a lot of fun. That was, the one right before Episode 3 came out. And, I was kind of, remembering, the good times that I had there and all that stuff and, looking forward to this adventure, and there were certain things that I was definitely, looking forward to at this particular event. The three in particular that I was looking forward to were the 40th anniversary panel, the Last Jedi panel, and the screenings of the various movies. They had two nights of screenings, and that's what I was looking forward to the most.
Okay, so those were the three things you were looking forward to most. Were you going in with a mindset of expecting, because I was at Celebration 3, it's the last one I was at. So my first question is going to be, in terms of line management, for somebody who did go to Celebration 3 and endured that, and I went to Celebration 2 and endured that, give me a grade for their line management here. What was that part of the experience like? Did you expect to wait in line as long as you did to see the things you wanted to?
I did expect to wait in the lines as long as I did to see these things. But I will say this, the lines were longer than I expected they would be. My personal wait time was pretty much what I had, thought, but the lines were longer than I thought they would be. But I would not say that was the fault of the organization. I think that the lines were better organized than they were at Celebration 3, but I also think they were longer. And there were a number of reasons for that. If I had to grade them on their line efficiency, I would probably give them a C for a number of reasons.
Well, considering the fact that my wife, who is a professional meeting planner, experienced Celebration 3 with me, and we all came out decidedly with a failing grade from that, I'd say that they've made forward progress for anybody that's keeping track there. Now, one thing that I was sort of unclear on was the big line wait at Celebration 3 and at previous celebrations was for the store, for the exclusives that they were going to have. Was the store the biggest line, or was it the panels that were the biggest line?
Well, on the first 2 days in particular, the panels, the 40th anniversary and the Last Jedi panels were the biggest line because those started the night before, With the store, it was, I didn't get into the store because every time I went there, it was like, okay, there's a line. How long is this line? 3 hours. Okay, yeah, no, I'm not going to wait 3 hours in line to go buy the stuff. Now, what they did at Celebration 4, which at the time I thought was like over the top, but now I realize maybe wasn't over the top, was at Celebration 4, they were like, we're keeping the store open 24 hours,
Wow.
and during the day, the line was long to get in. But like my friend and I went over like in the middle of the night, like at midnight or whatever, and there was nobody there, you know, and that was pretty great. And I kind of wish they would have done that here, because then I would have been able to get into the store.
I've always thought that what they should do is they should set up kiosks the way they do at rock and roll concerts.
Yeah.
And so that like you can go up, and certain kiosks you have to get certain things at, but by and large, if you just want a shirt or a hat or something, you can stop off at one of 100 places on the concourse and get something. Maybe that's an innovation we can see. I mean, with you guys waiting in line for the panels as long as you did, they should have had kiosks set up right there at the lines, and they could have taken your orders.
Yeah. I mean, they did have. I mean, this is like them getting smart, and I guess just time, being what it is or whatever. But back at Celebration 3, as you probably remember, the big panel that everyone wanted to get into was George Lucas, right?
Yes. I skipped that one.
Well, yeah, and that was one where the line started forming the night before. It was kind of understood that if you wanted to get in to see George Lucas, you're going to have to wait in line overnight. And my friend and I are like, we can do that, I mean, it's indoors and everything like that. That's no problem. So, and my other friend who we were with, who I lived with at the time, who I went down there with, he's like, I'm not doing that. Are you crazy? I'm gonna go home and sleep, But my friend Zach and I, we said, no, we're definitely gonna go to this thing. So we get there, and they're like, you can't wait. Like, we were towards the front of the line, and the security guards were like, you cannot wait here inside, because there's no security. Like, it's not set up for that, and it's not something that the convention center will allow. You guys have to wait outside. And we were like, okay, it's cold, but that's fine. So we're under the little canopy thing, and so the rain, which turned into snow later in the evening,
sure did.
As I found out, it wouldn't get to us. We're like, we can do this. And then they said, no, you can't wait here. You have to wait like off the building, so like down the street. Like, I remember we were like standing in like a parkway or something.
Yeah, you couldn't be on like a property within certain distance of the building.
So then we're standing in the rain in 40-degree weather, and we did that for like 45 minutes, and then finally I was like, screw this. I'm not doing this. Let's just George. I think what I said was like, would George Lucas do this for me? No, he would not.
No, he would not.
So I'm going to go home then, and then that's fine. And I don't get to see George Lucas and whatever. It is what it is. So I left, and we didn't get to see it. Interesting postscript to that story. As is the case with all of these conventions, after everyone who's in line fills in, surely there is, some empty space in the theaters, and there are people who wait, on standby essentially to get into the room. Well, as one of the panels was beginning, my friend who said, screw that, I don't care about George Lucas, I'm not going to see, this panel, he happened to be walking by the room, completely oblivious to everything. And some guy, some usher or whatever, who was outside of the room, getting the standby people in, he sees him walking by, and there were some empty seats, and he said, hey, do you want to come in and see George Lucas? And my friend was like, sure. And he got to go
beautiful,
in
man.
and see George Lucas, and then, of course, rub it in my face, since I didn't get to see that, and that was the thing I was looking forward to most at that convention.
But see, isn't that the message about being a Force user, is to let go and stop trying to control your destiny and allow the will of the Force to carry you there?
I guess that's what it is.
So there you go. Lucas provided that lesson, I bet. And
yeah.
it was for you, Mike Schindler.
So that was the first time, right? That was 2005, right?
Yeah.
But now, 12 years later, they've learned their lesson, and they've figured out how to monetize this. This goes back to you
right.
talking about like kiosks, because now it's not, you have to wait in line off property overnight. Now it's come to the sleepover, where there will be concessions for sale, And
Sure.
I mean, you should have seen that line for Papa John's in there. It was huge. I've got pictures. I have a picture of a line which started forming at 4 a.m. for coffee, even though the coffee stand didn't open up until 4:30, and the line
Yeah.
was like a good 20 people deep.
Sure.
I mean, yeah. So they kind of figured that out. Next step, the kiosks with the official store merchandise. They could have cleaned up, but baby steps, I guess.
Someday in the future they'll get there. They'll get
Yeah.
there. Now you talked about people getting into the theater for the panel, and so one of the things that intrigues me is they've had the movie showings at previous celebrations, and it wouldn't be something that would necessarily tickle my fancy. I love these films, obviously, and I would want to go see these films. What is it about the experience there that makes you want to go see the films at Celebration?
Well, I mean, it's the fact that they're up on the big screen, and in '05, they had like a digital projector, a DCP projector, which they brought in to show footage from episode 3. They had like those 2 sizzle reels for episode 3.
Oh, I remember them. I
with
remember
Rick
them. I remember Rick
McCallum just
McCallum cursing
sitting
during,
there
during
all
it. Yeah.
day long, which, I mean, Rick McCallum is the coolest, and that was so awesome. I just want to hang out with that dude, but whatever. And I went to see that a million times, but then at night they were like, oh, we're showing the movies, and they did like 3 double features or something. Well, they couldn't have been because there were only 5 movies, but they did
Right.
some combination where they showed all the movies. And I was like, oh, this is so cool, even though they were showing just the DVDs at the time, no Blu-ray yet. And
How did we manage?
Yeah, they weren't DCPs or anything, and I'm like, oh, well, these look like garbage, but it is cool
Wait, they
to
weren't
see
even
them.
DCPs.
Yeah,
That's nuts.
well, they didn't even have DCPs at that point, aside for 1 and 2.
Yeah, but I mean, that's what I'm saying is there would have been for 1 and 2, right? Like, because I remember seeing 2 digitally, like in the theater. It's not like it was, a rare print of the film that they couldn't get. It was, boop, here's your thumb drive.
Yeah. I mean, I think with episode 1, it was actually with episode 2 even, it might have been a little bit more complicated than that, because at that point in time, they were still going through a lot of compatibility issues, trying to figure out exactly what was the format. I remember the MPEG versus JPEG wars of 2006. It was crazy. It was a crazy time in the digital.
There were bits everywhere on the
world.
battlefield.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, there might have been some issues there, but regardless, we only got to see the DVDs, and they looked like garbage, but it was still a lot of fun seeing it with the audience and seeing it on the big screen, and the sound was great. And when the Celebration 4 rolled around in 2007, what they did, this is the first convention that they had after the second trilogy was completed, they did a thing where, the convention started on Thursday, but on Wednesday you could go to pick up your badges and stuff like that. And what they did was, on Wednesday you could go to a screening of all 6 movies back to back to back. And I'm like, that's what I want more than anything, to see it there. Now, we're in L.A., movie theater capital of the world. The Chinese theater is right down the street, where obviously that's where Star Wars is kind of like known for being shown. And all that they were playing was 28 Weeks Later, which had been out for months at that point. Not months, but weeks. Anyway, so why they couldn't have just been like, hey, we're doing this at the Chinese, I have no idea. But instead they did it in this gigantic convention hall with like concrete floors.
The sound must have been horrific.
Yeah, the sound was horrific, and the light leaking was terrible because they had like these like aircraft carrier sized doors that were just, and the light, even though the doors were closed, the light was just streaming through, and it was so bright in there. And these were DCP. Like I talked to, well, maybe not DCP, but they were digital files. Like I talked to the projectionist. I like went over to him. I'm like, hey, what are you guys running these off of? And they're like, oh, we've got the digital masters essentially. Like, I don't know if they were like the actual, I can't imagine them giving them the master tapes.
No, I highly doubt that.
but they were running them off of digital tape, and they were like, we even there's just so you know, because of the way that this was mastered or whatever, episode 1, since it was so early on, they're like, we actually, it's spread out across 3 tapes. So there's going to be 2 slight pauses
Wow.
in this movie while we switch the tape. You're right. I mean,
Wow.
the other ones ran smoothly, and they were like the same transfers that they had used for the DVDs, but they were in HD. And luckily, the sun went down just in time for Empire, as it should. And it was again a great experience. So having heard that at past conventions they showed like at the last one they showed Revenge of the Sith in 3D, and it's like that's awesome. I mean, this is the only time it's ever been shown. So I was really hoping for something like that, and what they ended up doing was 2 nights. One was Rogue One and A New Hope back to back, which is nice because they run right one into the other.
Right.
I got a question. And then the other night
though.
was 5, 6, and 7. So
does it mesh as nicely? Because I have not marathoned the 2 of them back to back.
Yeah,
and I have rewatched Rogue One recently. Watching it live now, obviously you go through the credits and then they change and you go to the bathroom and everything. Watching them back to back, I have an opinion about the ending, about how the ending could have worked even better plugging into A New Hope. But if wishes were fishes and everything, how did it play with a live crowd? Was everybody as electric as you would think, or were people sort of like, oh well, yeah, okay, that kind of worked? Like what was the general consensus?
No, people were electric. I mean, the thing that I really noticed is one thing that they did, which they came out at the beginning, and they're like, just so you know, there isn't going to be an intermission. We're just going to go one right into the other. And everyone's like, okay, all right, fine. So, like, the credits roll, and then immediately, the 20th Century Fox, fanfare starts up.
So it was the 20th Century Fox fanfare?
Yes.
Wow.
It was the 20th Century Fox fanfare for all of these. What we saw were the masters that were on the Blu-rays. And these were the same masters which played before Force Awakens when they did the 6-movie or the 7-movie marathon. And they were all 2K, even though they apparently have 4K masters. The only movie that was 4K was Rogue One, because that was mastered in 4K theatrically for theaters. And yeah, they were the exact versions that are on the Blu-rays. Interestingly, when they did show the 6 movies, the master that they used for episode 1 was the 2D master that they released along with the 3D version. So it's got that 3D-ified Lucasfilm logo at the front. But
yuck.
But to be fair, it is a new master, so the quality is much better than the Blu-ray in that particular case.
Okay. All right. So you went to both nights, yes?
Yeah.
How was the reaction for Rogue One versus The Force Awakens? Was there more electricity for one or the other, or did it just seem like the crowd was into it whole hog for all of them?
Yeah, well, I mean, to answer your question about whether they were into it, when going from Rogue One to A New Hope.
Oh, yeah.
Like, when the opening crawl of A New Hope came up, and, I mean, they really do kind of, like, describe what you just saw. There was a lot of applause, like, yeah, go guys, you did a good job in that last movie.
Gotcha.
And there were a lot of people who, like, basically after that first scene, they were like, okay, let's go, and they just left.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
With Rogue One versus Force Awakens, I would say the reaction, I mean, it might have been stronger for Force Awakens. For Rogue One, but it was a different crowd, a different night. For Rogue One, I mean, people were definitely into it and everything, but the crowd in general was a lot more boisterous on the second night, with episodes 5, 6, and 7. And there were a lot of moments in episode 7 that got applause. I think the crowd might have been smaller because that was the movie that played at like 10:30 at night, whereas Rogue One was at like 6 o'clock or 7:30 the night before. But yeah,
I've got to ask, because now that you've seen 5, 6, and 7 in a row, right in a row, is that opening 3 seconds of episode 7's fanfare is grating now as it was when it first went, because those notes don't quite match.
Oh, you can totally tell. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just making sure that I'm not insane on that one. So
No, you can totally tell. It doesn't really bother me, but yeah, you can definitely tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's different instrumentation, and it's like I sort of got over it, but it was like, because Lucasfilm actually reused, the opening burst of music. So like that's why it's identical, in the prequels and everything, is because they reused it, and Williams just composed the rest of the stuff, whereas they re-recorded it for this. And I came to peace with it. It's like, well, okay, this is a different set of movies, so whatever. That's fine. It's still the same music. Okay, so in terms of the panels, did the panels themselves meet your expectations? Were you thrilled with everything that you saw? Did you come out of them saying, "Yeah, I'm so happy," or were you happier with the smaller stuff you might have gone to see, like John Knoll? I know you went to see John Knoll.
Yeah.
Were you happier with the smaller stuff, or were you blown away by the stuff on the main stage?
I was pretty blown away by the stuff on the main stage. I mean, that first panel, for anyone who's sort of not aware of like what went down, basically going into it, people were like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy will be there. Hayden Christensen's going to be there, and like Billy D. Williams and Peter Mayhew. Everyone was like, well, you got to figure Mark Hamill's going to show up, things like that, because he's there, right? So, but people were like, what's going to happen? Are they going to announce the original trilogy on Blu-ray, unaltered? Are they going to announce,
that was my bet.
Yeah.
I thought that was going to happen. But as soon as I heard that Lucas was going to be there, I believe I sent you a message saying if Lucas is there, not a chance that's going to happen.
Well, there were people who thought like maybe Lucas will show up. People thought, maybe they were going to announce, Han Solo, movie, bring out, the Han Solo, people and then say like what the name of the movie is or whatever. There was a lot of speculation. People thought that there was going to be an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, announced. And so no one really knew for sure, right? And there weren't any big announcements, which was kind of a surprise. But, there were certainly some big surprises, which were really cool. It starts off with, Warwick Davis was hosting, right? And he brings out Kathleen Kennedy. And she's like, oh, Star Wars is great, but, there wouldn't be any Star Wars if it weren't for George Lucas. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone's like, oh my God, because there's George Lucas, coming out on stage. So finally, I got to see him after, 12 years. I finally got to see him on stage.
Excellent. And I watched the live feed. He seems to emit a very relaxed aura. Like retirement seems to be treating him well.
That's his thing, I think. He's always really relaxed,
It seemed amplified from previously. He seemed really, really
it was
sedate.
It was interesting. Like I was in the very last row and I could see behind me like the teleprompter. And at some point I sort of got wise to it and started like looking at it to basically see what was coming next, and because they'd be like, next slide,
Spoilers.
number 74 of 94, and I'm like, okay, and like as it's going along, I'm like, I guess they're at slide 87 now. I guess they're not going to be announcing anything big, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But like, you'd look back and you'd be like, here's Kathleen Kennedy's speech. And then you'd look back, when it was George Lucas's time to talk and there's nothing, Yeah. So he was just like, I don't care. He's just, like I even got the impression that, jumping ahead to the end when they did the Carrie Fisher tribute, like I think he was supposed to leave. Just the way that their body language looked and everything, I think he was supposed to leave and Kathleen Kennedy was going to introduce this. And I think right there on the stage, he was like, I want to stay. That was the impression that I got just from looking at it. I'm sure anyone can look at the feed and judge for themselves. Maybe I'm misreading. But, regardless of any of that. So, they bring him out. And Warwick Davis talks to him. He does the whole thing with his, the letter that he wrote about the toys, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with already.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh, here's Hayden Christensen and Ian McNiarmid,
I saw that.
Yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, and, that was cool and everything, but everyone sort of knew that was coming. So then they leave, and then they bring out Dave Filoni. And it's like, yeah, okay, obviously, Dave Filoni's there. He's got like
Filoni.
15 panels. So, sure, he's going to show up, right? So he leaves, and then they're like, oh, here's, the Star Wars, people, Peter Mayhew, Anthony Daniels, and Billy D. Williams, and it's like, yeah, it's great. I think all of them were announced, and it's like, well, they're at every single convention. I mean, it's cool to see them, but it's not like this is like, oh my god, look at the rabbit that they pulled out of this hat.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, oh, and Mark Hamill, and everyone's like, yeah, that's cool because he's here, of course. How could you not, right? And then, like, they're up there, and Warwick Davis is like, okay, George, this is crazy. Here you are with 4, or dare I say 5, of your greatest characters, character creations up on one stage. How could it get any more epic than this?
Mm-hmm.
And then they're like, ladies and gentlemen, Harrison Ford. And everyone's like, oh my God, oh my God. And Harrison Ford comes out, and that was pretty great. I mean, there were some rumblings in the crowd beforehand. I mean, like the people who I was like next to in line, there was like one woman who she was with her son, and her son stayed with us, but she like left for the night because like she had like a medical badge, so he was able to get like a wristband for her or whatever. And she came back in, but she had to wait like an hour and a half in line to get back in the morning.
Oh,
and she's like, people are saying they saw Harrison Ford outside. And we're all like, no, come on, he doesn't care about Star Wars. What could they do to get him to Orlando for this,
Yeah.
And they're like, and I even said to her, I'm like, did they say they saw Harrison Ford or did they say they saw Han Solo? Because Alden Ehrenreich I can see, Harrison Ford I can't. And she's like, no, they said Harrison Ford. I'm like, okay, I'll believe that when I see it, And there it was, there it is. So
he was obviously very overwhelmed by the reaction, I think. I mean, one of the things that I find absolutely endearing about Ford is that he doesn't have false humility about him in any way.
Mm-hmm.
Like when crowds react that way for him, he seems legitimately humbled by it, where he's like, well, oh, yeah, sure. Like he seems very genuine in his appreciation for the love that's thrown his way. When he shows up somewhere is what I'm saying. And that was nice to see.
Yeah.
Now with the Last Jedi panel, I mean,
well, we're skipping over the thing that's sort of like, because they did a whole tribute to Carrie Fisher with Billy Lord and everything. But then, it's like it's wrapping up and everything, and everyone's like, that was amazing, time to go home. And then the curtain opens up, and there's John Williams with a full orchestra.
Yeah.
And that's when people lost their freaking minds, And, I mean, I don't think anyone else could have possibly done this, anyone else in the world. But, the noise in that room was just like, ah! And then John Williams just turns around and, like, puts his finger to his lips. And everyone just shut up, and you could hear a pin drop in there, like
waiting
instantaneously. And then he plays Leia's theme, and everyone just starts bawling, of course,
Was it really... What were there a lot of tears? Were people really, really emotional?
Oh, yeah. I was even tearing up, I have to say. And, because I think everyone kind of also thought they were going to just like play him off with, Star Wars or whatever, the theme, but no, he plays Leia's theme and then Star Wars and then, everything. And I had actually, because someone in line was like, I hear John Williams is going to be here. I have an inside source and John Williams is going to be here. And it, like talking to the person, it's like, that's legit. Like now I'm going to be surprised if John Williams is not here, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so like as it's getting to the end and I'm looking at my watch and everything, I'm like, wow. And also like there's no space for an orchestra, right? Yeah. I'm like, wow, no John Williams. That's a bit of a surprise, that's kind of a shock. And then the curtain opens up and I'm like, oh, there it is. There it is.
I was playing along at home or on the live stream, and then the live stream, I mean, for me at least, I'm sure it wasn't this way globally, but for me, the live stream collapsed during Billy Lord speaking.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get it back. But yeah, that would have been pretty awesome to have Williams come up. That sounds like a really very cool experience, especially since there's very much a concert, like a rock concert vibe to everything that's happening there. To have music is just fitting.
Right. And it's like one surprise after another, and it's like, what can you do? Like, I mean, after they bring out Harrison Ford and George Lucas and everything, you're like, it doesn't get any better than this. What could you possibly do? It's like, well, you bring out John Williams and have him start playing Star Wars music,
Yeah.
right there in front of everyone. So, I mean, that was pretty impressive. Yeah.
So did you go to panels through the rest of that day, or did you take a nap and come back? How did you play the rest of that day in preparation for the Last Jedi panel?
Well, at that point, I went home and slept because my initial intention was to come back and get in line, and do this all over again for Last Jedi. But, the line really took a lot out of me. I barely got any sleep at all. I maybe slept for a half an hour total the whole night. And, it didn't help that they brought out a freaking DJ at 1 o'clock in the morning.
You shared that tweet with me, and I can tell you that I'm not a violent man. I really am not. But if that had happened and I was, like, say, just on the edge of sleep, probably I would have had to be escorted out of there.
It was insane, I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, you bring him out at, like, 11 o'clock or whatever, but 1 o'clock...
Right. Right,
on.
11 o'clock, everybody gets excited, has a nice little chuckle before they go to sleep. But yeah, 1 o'clock, that's crossing a line, man.
I mean, maybe they were waiting for everyone to be in because they were locking the doors at midnight, but I mean, whatever. I don't know. So, I was kind of like, Last Jedi panel, I know what to expect. It's going to be, all, because we've seen it. We've seen it twice now already, We've seen it with Rogue One. We saw it with Force Awakens. Like, I know what I'm going to expect. I'll just go to the overflow room and watch it on the big screen. If not, I'll go to my hotel room and watch it at home. But I'm going to get some sleep so that I can kind of enjoy the rest of the day. Because, I mean, after like Force Awakens, or after the 40th anniversary, I was like, okay, I need to go home and sleep. And I did. And then I woke up and saw John Knoll. And then after seeing John Knoll, I was like, it was like 6:30 at night. The line was supposed to start forming at 8 for Last Jedi, and there was already a line which was basically as long as it was when I went, for the 40th anniversary. So I'm like, screw this. I'm going to go watch Fate of the Furious instead.
I applaud your decision personally. So
well,
I would say that's the right way to play it.
I thought so too. I was very proud of myself until the next day when I returned at 5 a.m. to get my wristband for one of the overflow rooms, and I find out that they didn't have a DJ the second night, but what they had was Ryan Johnson, who decided to show up and shake everyone's hand. Spent 4 hours in that room going down the line saying
seems
hi
like a
to
good
everyone.
guy. He seems like a really good guy to have done that. I mean, the thing is, it's one thing to have the director show up and be like, hey, that's great, I'm going to go back to my hotel room and sleep. But for him to be in with the crowd and express appreciation like that shows that guy, he appreciates the moment he's in and the people he's with.
I mean, other filmmakers or whoever should definitely take note of that because he's a big geek for sure, right? But he goes to like Button-Umathon all the time and stuff like that, and he's one of those people who probably would legitimately be standing in that line if he wasn't up on the stage, right?
Right.
So, as someone who knows all that stuff, it's like he shows up and, there's absolutely no downside aside from, maybe not getting a lot of sleep. But it's like you go there and you're a rock star for one thing, right?
Oh, yeah.
Everyone loves you, right? But then, you watch that panel the next day and they're like, so, you... And everyone in that room was just like, it was like the loudest applause of anything because all those people in that room met him,
Right.
It's like there's so much goodwill generated. There's absolutely no downside to doing that,
Yes. And I completely agree. I think that would have been really neat to meet him and shake his hand. I know that there were a flurry of selfies out there on the internet of people meeting him and having all of those great things. I'm gonna say one thing about watching the live stream of the Last Jedi panel is that Josh Gad is a great host.
Oh, yeah, he was really
I think
good.
that he is fantastic, and they should bring him back every time because he was funny and he was self-effacing. The moment when the BB-8 joke didn't go, and he was just like, "Oh, that worked better in rehearsal." Okay,
Yeah.
I appreciate his humor very
Yeah,
much.
no, he was really good. I mean, sometimes the people who they have hosting are just like you're just like, oh my god. I mean, that was a problem. That was a really big problem at Celebration 4, where like there was one stage where they had some guy hosting, and he had like this massive video introduction for every single panel that he did,
Ugh.
and like he was like the one who was interviewing Irvin Kershner, and I'm like, we are taking away so much time from actually seeing Irvin Kershner. What are you doing?
Right.
And
Right.
I mean the I only saw a couple panels with hosts, but like Warwick Davis was really good, you know, uh, um, Josh Gad was really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Warwick Davis he knows how to work a crowd
Mm-hmm.
very much. He
Yeah.
knows, and I think Gad has that same sort of energy about him. But let's go ahead and let's we know that they introduced the new actress who's going to be in it, and they had some shots. I really enjoy. I hope that Ryan Johnson publishes a book of his photographs from on set, because just the few that we saw were great.
Yeah.
But I want to hit it right here. First question: teaser poster and trailer.
Yeah.
Which one did you like better?
I
don't want any qualifications or explanations. Which one did you like better? It doesn't mean that either one was bad.
okay.
It just means which one did you like better? Which one got the most wow reaction out of you when you first saw it?
Okay, the poster.
Okay. I think that's a fairly common reaction. Now, the trailer, because I've been dying to talk about the trailer with you ever since it dropped. I'm like, okay, Mike and I got to talk about this.
Yeah.
What was your takeaway? Watching the trailer those first two times, what was your takeaway from that trailer?
I thought it looked really cool. I mean, I guess a couple of things that I saw, like sort of my impression, and one of the reasons why I was like, I don't need to stay up all night to see this, is because even though like I liked Force Awakens a lot more than Rogue One, okay, like I am not nearly as excited about the episodes as I am about the standalone movies, because I know what I'm going to get with the episodes in a sense, and I'm like, okay, it's yes, and now the story continues. Whereas like with Han Solo, I'm like, what are they going to do? Like I have no idea what they're going to do in this thing.
That's a fair comment. Sure.
And it's like with this, I was like, okay, so yes, it'll be exciting because the story will continue. But like hearing them talk and seeing the trailer, it added a couple of layers that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Mainly, the whole thing, which I should have seen coming from, a mile away, 100 miles away. And it's my own sort of like stupidity for not seeing it, sure. But the idea that, she gets there and is like, train me, Luke. And Luke's like, no, I'm not into that. I do not want any Jedi. This is not a good idea. I mean, I think everyone in the room was like, oh, that's crazy, But you think about it and you're like, no, that's kind of what the entire first movie was about, right? Like they're looking for Luke because they want to train Jedi, and Luke's like, screw you all. I'm going to go live on this island, know?
If somebody wants to train Jedi, they don't erase the copy of every map imaginable and go there.
So I mean, it's an interesting twist. I mean, the training montages and everything. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities between that and Empire, but the twist being that the reluctant. I mean, I guess Yoda was somewhat reluctant too, but the very reluctant, trainer is interesting.
I will say that the training shot that we got of the twirling lightsaber actually reminded me more of Highlander. Than anything else, because there is a specific, during the training montage in Highlander, he's doing the sword play on the cliff.
Yeah, that's true. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, knowing Johnson and his vast knowledge of film, I wouldn't be surprised if that was.
I saw a visual cue that reminded me of Brick. The shot of Luke standing in the cave with it looked just like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and the other characters standing, silhouetted against the light when the camera's inside the tunnel. I was like, oh, okay, that looks like a Ryan Johnson shot that I'm familiar with.
Yeah.
But the ships that were skimming over that surface with the giant plumes of red coming up behind them, as what are fairly obviously Imperial walkers in the distance, like that was awesome. I was like, that was really bold cool. Color.
And that they announced later on in the show that Star Tours is making a new level or whatever you want to call it,
Sweet.
which is going to take place on that planet. So
Sweet.
yeah, so that'll be out next year. But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I guess one of the things which struck me about it was like how sort of like rich the photography was. Like it
Yeah.
really looked different from Force Awakens. I mean, I love the way the Force Awakens looks. I mean, Dan Mendel, he's the bomb. But with this, it was like there was a different quality to it. It really looked like a different movie, and I really liked the way that it looked.
All right, so we've gotten through these things. We've talked about the big panels and everything, and as we're drawing to a close, my thought, being a spectator at home, was those live big crowd scenes were cool, but I'm not sure that I got something where I was like, I'm, like walking down the street, tearing my shirt off and, gnashing my teeth that I didn't go. Was your experience positive enough that when they have another celebration, so long as it's, it lines up with work and everything, did you come out of this one saying, I am going to the next one? Or did you come out of this one saying, it's going to kind of depend?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to depend. I mean, I think I kind of knew that going into it or whatever, I mean, I had a lot of fun, for sure. I don't know. It was definitely a different experience for me. Like I don't think I walked the entire show floor, just because of, I mean, it was very, very hazy in terms of my just sleep schedule and everything.
Right.
Like I was waking
Sure.
up. I mean, I was like, great, I can get another hour and a half of sleep right here. I mean, I was like timing it all out to that. And I missed a lot of stuff because of that. I missed a lot of panels that I wanted to see and everything. But I think I would have to manage my time better. But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun, but I don't feel like this was like a, like a must see. I mean,
Yeah.
But
See,
I had never been to. I mean, you see like San Diego and everything like that, and with these big, sort of like movie reveals, sort of like panels and stuff like that, where they do like a new trailer and they bring out the directors and every single person. And, I mean, that's like the big con experience, which you see at places like most notably San Diego, Hall H, the Hall H experience. And I had never been to a convention like that before. This was the first time I had ever done that, and it was fun to experience that. Like I'm glad that I had that experience. Do I need that for episode 9? Probably not. No. But I mean, if everything worked out and I could go to Celebration 10 or whatever it is, yeah, I would go. But is it like I need to start requesting the time off of work now? And no, not quite. Yeah.
And okay, so to go out on an up note, I'm going to ask 2 questions in a row. The first one is the most disappointing experience there. Not singling anybody out or anything like that, but just like what was the one where you were kind of like, oh, that could have been better. And then your very best experience there.
Okay, I guess the most disappointing experience was probably the fact that the show store line was so long, and that, like to the point of not even being able to get into it. That's kind of crazy. The best experience I think was seeing Empire Strikes Back up on the big screen, with some pretty decent sound this time. It wasn't perfect sound, but it was pretty decent sound.
Awesome.
And yeah, that was probably the highlight for me.
Well, very cool. Thank you for sharing your Star Wars Celebration Orlando memories. If people want to reach out to you online, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Mumbles3K, and you can also find me on my website, commentarytrackstars.com, doing commentary track stars, and you can find me on talkfilmsociety.com, doing Soderbergh 2828, and you can find me on Trek.fm doing Stage 9 with you.
That's right. We do Stage 9 together over on the Trek FM network, which is essentially this show, but for Star Trek creators. It's a lot of fun. And you can also find me over here on the network on Aggressive Negotiations, a Star Wars podcast with Matthew Rushing. You can find me co-hosting Words with Nerds with my pal Craig. And otherwise, my name on the internet when it's not Mud is Kessel Junkie, and so you can find me by looking up that username. But until next time, we thank you for listening, and join us next week right back here on the Nerd Party Network.